everybody, welcome to the Comic Game Movie Show. My name is Deshaun and I am here to bring you my review of Sony's Morbius. Now, I don't know why this movie exists. Now, when they announced this movie and they announced Jared Leto, I was like, why? Me and many other people universally had a question mark above our heads. And the same people, like we were saying the same thing about the Craven movie, same thing about this Madam Web movie. Why? And it's all sort of kind of made me go, like, and in my mind I was like, look, Sony, and like after the success of Venom, Sony had announced that they wanted to do their own like Spider-Man cinematic universe without Spider-Man in it, which was always kind of strange anyways. You know, I hate Venom. I dislike Let There Be Venom, Let There Be Carnage. I think those movies are movies that are a reminder of a bygone era. I think those movies are ridiculous, over the top, and insanely stupid. I think Tom Hardy is just like, while he might be having fun, he's having fun at the expense of doing anything actually legitimately good. I highly dislike those Venom movies. Very much so. But even those movies have a certain bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? Self-awareness of what they are, to a degree. I don't think that first Venom, I don't think that first Venom had that. I think that first Venom genuinely thought it was like they were making a good movie and like they didn't know it was stupid. But people took it weird. Like I've always said, half of Venom's success is predicated on number one, people being confused and thinking it took place in the MCU because Sony was very vague, and they still are to this day about the straight up lying with the marketing about Venom. And two, there's a nice section of comic book fandom who hate the MCU, spite the MCU, and will support anything that isn't the MCU just so they can stick it to the MCU. And then there's also people who are tired of, like, who aren't trying to stick it to the MCU, they're just tired of the MCU and they just want to see something, you know, like this. And then like there's general audiences and whatnot. There's a lot of reasons why the Venom movie was successful. Same reasons why while both of those movies are rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, because they're not very good movies. But even those two movies, for all my dislikes, aren't boring. I think they're stupid as fuck, but they're not boring. I never saw the Venom movie and said I was bored. This movie, Morbius, is generic, soulless. There's very little imagination in this film. And above all else, the plot, how it's carried out, how it's executed, how the characters are used, is total nonsense. I think that's the best word to describe this movie, is total nonsense. It's not so bad that you can get enjoyment out of making fun of it, which makes it even worse, I think, because they're like, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not so bad that you can go back and talk about this movie years from now. Like, this movie's not gonna go with, like, you know, Catwoman and, you know, Fantastic Four, Stick and whatnot. Like, it's not quite that bad, but it's not that far away from those films. And above all else, the movie is boring. It is paint by numbers. You see every beat coming a mile away. The CGI, like, even to me, while like the CGI isn't that bad, at least in the beginning, because in the beginning of the movie it's just generic. Like, I think that's the best description. The beginning of the movie is generic, plain and simple generic, nothing really to it. You're gonna just like all the tropes and all the beats, and it's just nothing really to it. But the second half of the movie is nonsense. That's the best way to describe it. Generic, and then it's nonsense. And even the way it's structured at the beginning is all over the place. I found myself by the end of this movie feeling so tired. I was tired. I felt more tired watching the hour and, like, what is this movie? The hour and 40 minutes of this movie than watching all 3 hours of The Batman. And I felt pretty tired after I got done watching 3 hours of The Batman. I liked The Batman. I had a great time with it. I gave it 8.5, but by the time I got to the end of that movie, I was like, fuck, I want to go home. I want to go home and lay down. Like, it was just so much, and it was so long. It was just like, dude, like, come on, man. Like, I just want to go home. I felt like that by the end of this movie. I was the first person to stand up and walk out. The post-credit scenes are as dumb as they sound. Like, they're just really dumb. And a lot of things in this movie are really dumb. There are powers Morbius has that don't actually make any sense. The science of how he became who he became is a bit muddy at best. The villain is the only thing that's like, the villain and his motivations are pretty weak and pretty, like, things happen. And like, I've said this before about other films. I've said this before. I've often said that one of my gripes with Man of Steel is that the only reason Lois Lane is in as much of the plot as she is, they don't really give a good reason other than she's Lois Lane and she has to be his love interest. That's it. There's no actual good reason for her to be involved in certain aspects of that film. They could have did the whole Man of Steel movie without her, and it might have been a better movie. There's a lot of that in this movie, where there are things that just happen because they have to happen that way. Like how quickly and how crazy the villain turns. It's just like, okay, how quickly the movie is just moving at a fast, like, but it's somehow, like, I've heard this described, and I think this is a good description too by someone. How can a movie somehow be moving too fast and dragging at the same time? And I can't believe it, but that's so true. There's so much about this movie that you're just like, I didn't even need to know that. I didn't need to see that. And then there's so much about the movie you're like, I wish I could have had more elaboration on that. I wish there could have been more time for this to breathe. For instance, minor spoilers, when the villain gets his powers, they set it up to seem like, oh, maybe Morbius did it. And Morbius himself, is like, I don't know, maybe I did it. I don't know, I could have blacked out. But they they clear that up so quickly that there's no time to really sit on it. There's no time to sit on it at all. You don't even, everything is just moving. You can feel edits and like in this film, and like I've never really felt that before, and I'm sure I've seen movies where it felt like that. Even in Fan 4 Stick, I felt it. That's good. I haven't felt editing like this since Fan 4 Stick, where you can feel like there's supposed to be something here, but it's not there. This movie feels like it was supposed to be like there's probably like another 30 minutes of this film left on the cutting room floor, which doesn't really mean much. I mean, it still would have been an okay movie. I think if you would have put those 30 minutes that are probably chopped out of this film into the movie again, I do think you'd probably end up with an okay movie. It's not, it's like, because, other than the CGI at the end, man, the CGI at the end got like Venom bad. Like, because that was one of my complaints about Venom is that it's so muddy that you can't really tell what's happening. You know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong. Like, Marvel, all some of these bigger, studios use CGI heavily, but it's just used and it's just so muddy. The movie can be so dark sometimes where you can't make out anything. And you know something though? There are two sequences in this movie that should have been how this whole entire movie went. There's the first sequence on the boat where Morbius gets his powers, which I actually enjoyed that sequence. I actually enjoyed it. I actually thought, this is what this is like, because it comes at the beginning, so you're like, you know what, if the movie is this, it might not be too bad. And then there's the hospital sequence where it's real horror style, and it's like, okay, but it's never really that again. And like, I think they should have committed to the horror more. And the problem I have with Sony is that the entire reason that, like, I remember when they announced Venom for the first time, the entire reason I was okay with Sony doing Venom is because I'm like, well, okay, so Sony gets the opportunity to do something different. They can do something out that the MCU can't do. But all Sony wants to do is make but it seems like Sony is stuck in the early 2000s. Because that's what this movie feels like. It seems like Sony is stuck in the early 2000s. They think that they're still the cock on the block with Spider-Man 1 and 2 and 1, 2, and 3. They think they're still those dudes, and it's like, dude, like, times have changed. And this whole generic thing you go for, even if you would have put in the 30 minutes that it seems like they probably cut out of this movie, it still would have been a generic 2005, like a la Ghost Rider, a la Elektra, you know, fucking, let me think, old, like Punisher / like, it still would have been one of those films. Like, this movie fits right in with those. Like I said, it's not quite as bad as a Catwoman. It's not quite as bad as Fan 4 Stick. It's like, it's not the worst film I've ever seen. It's not the worst comic book movie I've ever seen. But I'm not going to give this movie slack for the bar. I've seen too many people today on the internet, on Twitter, on YouTube, who have literally cut this movie the ultimate amount of slack just because it wasn't a complete and utter train wreck. No, is this movie a complete and utter train wreck where it's just like you walk out of this movie and you just want to get your money back and you're angry and you're upset? No. But that's only because it's so unremarkable, it's so generic, it's so lifeless that you just, it just exists. You know what I mean? It's not bad enough to get rage. It's just here. And the problem I have with this film, the reason I am upset, is because that's what everyone thought when they announced this movie is, why does this exist? And you walk out of this movie wondering, why does this exist? And it makes me think about the Craven movie they're making, makes me think about the Madam Web movie they're making. Why do these movies exist? What makes you think that those movies will be any better than this movie? It's so nuts to me. And I'm just hoping that people come to their senses and stop supporting their fucking movies so they can get their act together, which they probably won't. I digress. This movie is, I don't even know. It's generic, boring, none of the characters are very interesting. It's rushed and dragged simultaneously. This movie gets a 3 out of 10 from me. I can't give it anything lower than that because it's not like the movie is like unwatchable. It's not like it's just like a terror. Like, it's not like it's, like I said, I've seen worse, but not by much. This movie gets a 3 out of 10 from me. I don't know what the fuck Sony's doing. Those post-credit scenes were like ridiculous and they don't make any sense at all. And like, I don't want to get into it. 2 out of 10. Fuck it. This movie gets a 2 out of 10. Fuck this movie. Anyways, thank you guys for joining me on Comic Game Movie Show. Please like, subscribe, and please, for the love of everything, don't go see this movie. There's plenty of things you can do better. You can watch paint dry. I mean, you could stare at the sun. I mean, there's a lot of options that are better than watching this movie. Oh, God. Honestly, like, if the sun was out right now and I had the option of watching that movie staring at the sun for an hour and 44 minutes or watching this movie for an hour and 44 minutes, it would be a tough call. Anyways, thank you guys again. I'll see you in the next one.